Hey everybody, welcome to this live edition of the Sewing Report. I'm Jennifer Moore, helping you discover your love of sewing, and this is today's topic. So, whether we like it or not, the sewing community has a bit of a dilemma. We need more people sewing, particularly young people and males, if we want to keep this industry alive and sustainable. So, let's get into it. I've got a couple bullet points I wanted to talk about, and of course, we're going to throw the comment box up, but I think this is a very important topic to tackle, and I know it can be a little bit divisive, so please be kind to each other. And again, I also want to stress that this is not going to be a show that's just bashing the current sewing community, but I want to try to maybe propose some solutions and some things we can do to welcome new people into the ranks, because that's extremely important for us as a community if we want sewing to be around in 20 or 30 years. So anyways, I know, happy Sunday, everybody. Yes, I know it's been another bit of a rough week, but, we're getting through it. We are getting through it. And, anyways, welcome. If you are watching right now, let me know where you're watching from. And I know I've talked about this topic before, and I did link below some of the editorials I've written about attracting millennials to sewing, because let's be honest, I'm a 30-something woman, and I don't come across a lot of people my age or younger who actually sew. I think it's becoming more and more rare for people who are under 30 to sew, which I think is sad. So that's why and that's actually why I started this channel to begin with, is to show a different perspective, show a different voice, and try to encourage other people in my type of situation, my type of lifestyle, that sewing is something you can do, sewing is something that's fun, and sewing is something that can bring you enjoyment if you, no matter what walk of life you're in. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Let me throw up the chat window. You know what? Hold on one second. I forgot to... Alright, sorry, it's been a little crazy today. I'm also simultaneously doing laundry and dishes right now. So I'm trying to multitask a little bit, and I need to get the chat window stuff set up again. Okay. Alright, so let's see if I can get this rolling. I don't know. This, my OBS today, not working with me. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me, and I know this topic, last week when I proposed it, people immediately started weighing in, so I thought it would be a good one to discuss. And we've got a few folks joining us. We've got Melita, Amy, JB again from El Paso, Vic, Barbara, and Champion Twist. Hi, everybody. So the reason I wanted to talk about this topic today is because, and again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to blog and do a YouTube channel, is because I just don't come across a lot of people in my everyday life who sew. And when you do meet someone and talk about sewing with them and they don't sew, they don't know anything about it. Like, they have this impression of what sewing is, but it's really not remotely accurate. Like, they think if you sew, you automatically sell stuff. They think it's difficult. And I think the perception for a lot of people is that sewing is, kind of making grandma type stuff. And that's not the case, and that's why when I started sewing, I really liked the world of blogs and Instagram, because I could see, more modern products, more modern projects that had the type of aesthetic that I like, not necessarily something that the traditional sewing industry touts. So I wanted to talk about there's a few different things I wanted to touch on. So... Alright, so and I'm not even sure where to start with this, but I think while it may seem like this world is bigger than it is, a lot of us have a blog, a lot of us connect on Facebook and on Instagram and here on YouTube, so it kind of feels like there's more of us than there really are, and I follow a lot of younger sewing bloggers and vloggers. But I think when you get out into the everyday world, you find that there really aren't that many people who sew, particularly anyone that's young, your age or younger. So I think that's the reality. And I think for us as a sewing community, I think it's something that we don't really address. I don't even think we know how to address it. I don't think we know what to do or how to change things. And I don't think this is something that we would be able to tackle overnight or in a few months. I think this is a process where if we do want to maybe change the landscape of who sews, I think this is something that's going to take a long time. This is something that's going to be maybe a decade process, but I do think there are, some areas of improvement where we might be able to reach out to more people. And that's, again, why I do the sewing report, is to try to reach people that are interested in sewing and make it not look intimidating, and also encourage people and let them know, you know what, if I can do this, you can definitely do this too. So I wanted to talk about a few things that I've kind of noticed over, I've been sewing for about 4-ish years. Obviously I love it. There are a few things that I do find frustrating that I wanted to address. The first thing is that I think buying a sewing machine needs to be easier, especially for the manufacturers that currently only sell sewing machines at a dealership. Bernina, Baby Lock, Janome. There are some models like Brother and Singer, I think, really have the market cornered for big box stores and online sales, and Janome's doing pretty good with this too. But I think this whole business model of you having to physically go to a sewing machine dealership is not going to survive another 20 years, especially not with everything that's happening in the world of e-commerce. Now people buy a lot of things on Amazon. People buy their groceries online and get them delivered. So I think this whole 1970s vibe of you having to go there, haggle over the price, is very it's just not, it's not sustainable. So if you do own a sewing machine store or a sewing machine dealer or quilt shop, please think about this. Think about the fact that if you want to attract different customers, you might have to come up with different ways of getting your product to them, because I don't think a lot of teens or 20-somethings are necessarily going to walk into a sewing machine dealer. And I think businesses, if a business wants to survive, you need to adapt to your customers and not the other way around. I do follow a business, kind of a business mogul / motivational speaker named Gary Vaynerchuk. If you haven't heard of him or checked him out, I've linked a few of his, he's got video, he's huge on YouTube. He also has a Facebook show, and he has a lot of experience with building businesses and also what he calls day trading attention. And I think if you want to expand your customer base, you really need to, one, get their attention. So Gary talks a lot about that sort of thing. I do have one disclosure. He curses a lot. If that really bothers you, obviously I just wanted to let you know. But I do think his information is very valuable, especially for a space like ours where we're trying to segue from one generation to the next successfully. And I don't think we're doing a very good job, because we're not seeing a lot of younger people sewing. So I think that's definitely an area that we could look at and improve upon. So if you do own a sewing related business, any sewing related business, you need to strategize like it's 2017 and not 1977. The whole typical, sending flyers in the mail, or, having a website that looks like it was built in 1995, and, getting even email marketing now is not very effective just because it's been so saturated to death. So I think you need to think, what kind of customers do I want to attract, and how can I really reach them? How can I, obviously every young person on the planet uses Snapchat. A lot of them watch more YouTube than television. So you really need to think where your audience is and go to them. You can't expect them to, I just think this whole notion of you expecting like a 20-year-old to go to a physical store is a bit ridiculous. And I think it's a bit out of touch with what's happening in the business world. So if anyone else has a thought on that, let me know. Okay, we got a couple comments. I know 2 other girls my age who are young mothers, and so also my cousin-in-law and brother's ex-girlfriend or sister, so all between the ages of 16 and 30. Vic, I think that's great. Sherry, I think there's a problem with people working with their hands in general. Sherry, I would agree with you, and I think that we definitely need, there's a bit of a movement, I think, with DIYing things, and like, I remember when HGTV came on the scene, it became popular to do your own DIY projects. I think we need to do something like that. All right, Teresa, I just found you this weekend. Thank you so much, Teresa. And we got a couple, and if you are a younger person like Vic or Jennifer, who's 25, I think that, Jennifer got her sewing machine from Costco. So, and I think that definitely tends to be the trend when people do buy their first sewing machine is they buy the sewing machine from a store like Costco or Sam's Club, or they get it from Amazon. So sewing machine dealerships, what does that mean for you? That means they're not buying it from you. So I do think it's great. There are some sewing machine dealers that have Amazon storefronts. I think that's a step in the right direction. And that's also why I wanted to really work with the Eversewn sewing machine brand, is because that brand sells heavily online. And I think that's the way, if you want to get customers now in 2017, that's how you got to do it. All right, we've got Josie, I just found your channel a few days ago. I've been binge watching your videos ever since. I'm 35, new to sewing, and no clue as to what I'm... Josie, that's okay. I didn't know what I was doing either. And you know what? Here I am. So definitely you can definitely learn. And this is a process that sewing is something that you just really learn over time. And it's fun to learn. And that's why I like learning a new technique or picking up a new project. We've got Jason from Pink Castle Fabric, and he actually does own a quilt and fabric store and sewing machine dealer. Jason, anytime I tell people I work in a fabric store, I get a lot of weird looks. A, because I'm a guy, and B, because they don't know people sew anymore. After I show them our fabric, I get, oh. And that's another thing. I think as far as branding goes and just name recognition, a while ago I polled a lot of people I knew that were just in my social circles, and I asked them if they had heard of different sewing machine brands. They didn't. The only ones they were aware of were Brother and Singer. Most of them didn't even know Janome, which, Janome is available pretty widely too on Amazon, and they even sell some of their models in stores like Joann's. And I think the other thing that if you don't sew, you don't realize is that you kind of assume all the fabric that exists is at Joann Fabrics, but they don't realize this whole world of designer fabrics, like Michael Miller, Cotton and Steel, the ones that are only sold at high quality quilt shops. These people don't know these fabric lines exist. They're super cute, but they don't know they're out there. So I think the fabric companies could do a much better job of, just getting that brand recognition. And also these sewing machine manufacturers like Pfaff or Bernina or Baby Lock. If you're one of those companies, or Juki even, nobody knows you. Like, seriously, nobody knows you exist. So I think that's a problem if you're trying to sell sewing machines, right? Champagne Twist, this topic could easily run for weeks. Yes, it could. And, depending on how this goes today, maybe we can do like a part 2 of this and talk more about it, because I think this is something that, is definitely an ongoing conversation. And also it's going to change as YouTube didn't exist before 2006. Instagram didn't exist before a few years ago. So there's always going to be something new that's coming out. And if you do have a sewing related business, one thing Gary Vaynerchuk recommends, and I love listening to Gary Vaynerchuk. I've gotten a lot of ideas and inspiration and just motivation on really trying to be ahead of the curve. And he's like, you know what, whenever something new comes out, you need to be on it. You need to be a practitioner and not a headline reader, because people have all kinds of thoughts about Facebook marketing or Snapchat, but most of these people don't actually use these platforms or really try them out. Just because you run one Facebook ad, maybe your creative sucked, or maybe you need to do something different. But he also felt, and one thing I would like to share with you that he says is that he still feels Facebook ads are very underpriced. So he always recommends to people, go for the underpriced attention. So like Snapchat is kind of tanking stock-wise, and in full disclosure, I own Snapchat stock. I bought it on the first day. It's not doing very well. But he also said that means the ads on Snapchat are going to be really cheap right now because nobody values the company. And every person under like 24 is on Snapchat. All right, we've got a couple more comments. All right, Vic, I think that sewing is an art and very useful as well. I don't think it'll ever die. And Vic, I don't think it'll die completely, but as time goes on, fewer and fewer people are really doing it. So I think as a community, we need to figure out how to reverse that and light this. We need to light this industry on fire. That's what I want to do, and that's the whole purpose of everything. We've got a couple more comments. What do most Western tweens, teens, and 20-somethings spend the majority of their time? I would suggest anything related to social media. Yeah, they do that. And you know what, though? They are into making stuff. A lot of teens and young 20-somethings are into crafting. They're into DIYs. And particularly they're into repurposing and upcycling things. So I think that's something that we could use to our advantage. They like those things already, but most of them don't own a sewing machine. So if you can get a sewing machine into their hands, you could probably get somewhere with them. But the thing is, you just need to get it into their hands. I find that a lot of people buy their first machine at Walmart, though if I ever spend more than $100 on something, I don't want to risk it online. You know what, Vic? I would disagree. I have bought several things off of Amazon that were very expensive without seeing them in person. But you know what I did? I went by the reviews. When I buy something, I will filter it out so I only see the 4 stars and up reviews. And, and I go with that. And I actually have never really been super unhappy with something I purchased that was expensive off of Amazon. All right, we've got a few more comments. Okay. All right, wow, so many comments. Okay, Teresa, I'm 28 and got my sewing machine from my uncle's girlfriend. Still pretty new at it, but excited to learn more. Teresa, I'm so happy to hear that. And anyone who's new to sewing, so happy to have you here. And I hope you find this community welcoming, and I really hope that you are encouraged and find support that you need. And also let us know in the comments what, if you're like, say, under 35, what do you think might entice more people your age or younger to get into sewing? What do you think? For instance, I'm in my 30s. I would never even begin to tout myself as an expert on teenagers. I'm not a teenager, number one, and I haven't been one for like 20 years. So for me to try to gauge the pulse of being a teenager, I can't do that myself. So if I was trying to do that, I would ask teenagers what they would want. Would you want to learn to sew? Why? Why not? What would encourage you to sew? So if you are trying to do some informal research, ask the people that you're trying to reach out to versus just assuming, like you see a lot of 50-year-olds trying to market to 20-year-olds. I don't think they're going to be very successful unless they actually talk to a real 20-year-old, I've got lots of comments. Okay, I'm not even sure where to go. Okay, I don't get Fabric Joanne. Okay, Fabric Mart. My mom used to make a lot of my clothes when I was growing up, so I've always wanted to learn. I made my baby shower dress in 2012, but it was both a disaster and shining achievement. All right, Melinda's Life and Style. You can get a sewing machine online, the shopping networks, and pay monthly and try them out. They're carrying more than Singer as of late. That's good to hear. All right, we got a few more. Okay, Melinda, and I would agree with Melinda. Sewing in the younger community is more popular in Europe. It does seem that way. I don't know. A lot of people attribute that to the Great British Sewing Bee. And also here there's Project Runway, but I think I've gotten some other commentary that the high fashion sewing seems intimidating to people. So while people watch Project Runway, I think it looks too complicated for them, and then they're like, yeah, I can never do that. Because when I talk to people and ask them, and I've asked many people who don't sew, like, why wouldn't you sew? Like, would you want to learn? And a lot of the responses I get are, and I got a few Instagram comments like this today as well. They either say something like, I bought a sewing machine, but I've not taken it out of the box, but I have one. So people are occasionally buying them, usually from like Walmart or Sam's Club or Costco or from Amazon or Overstock or something, but then they're not using them. So we definitely, I think, need more resources to get these people to actually use the sewing machine. And the other comment I get a lot is, I could never do that. My mom sews, my grandma sews, I could never do that. I get that comment a lot. So I think there are a lot of people that just don't think they're intimidated by it and they don't think they could do it. But I would say to that, once I got comfortable with the machine, that's when things started turning around for me. Once I kind of figured that out, everything got much easier. And then it's just sort of building on your skills and techniques, learning one skill at a time, that sort of thing. All right, we got a lot more comments. Okay, and guys, I might not read them all, but that's why we've got the chat window, is so that you can read every single one of them and see every single one of them. So hopefully that helps. Let's see here. All right, Joe, starting out sewing, I think being able to touch the fabric is very important, and also having knowledgeable salespeople. And I think here's another thing. I've gone to quite a few quilt shops and fabric stores, and again, I'm not trying to knock or bash people who are older or who have more experience, but most of the people that work in these businesses are, not, don't, they usually do tend to be older women. And the shops usually have kind of more of like the grandma type vibe to them. Like the fabric choices, like for instance, I have a quilt shop that's literally like a mile from my house. And the people there are very nice. And I would love to patronize the business more, but they don't carry fabrics that I like. So, I would like to go to the business more, but they don't, because they don't carry the stuff that I want, I'm not going to go there and buy stuff I don't want. And I was like, hey, would you ever consider carrying cotton and steel? Do you have cotton, or anything like that? And they don't want to. And that's totally up to them. They can carry whatever they want. It's their own business. But sadly, that means I can't really be a customer. I've gone there and tried to buy some notions and things like rulers and stuff. But it's just not, they just don't carry stuff that I'm looking for, which is kind of sad because it is so close, guys. It is so close to my house. So it's a little bit sad. So if you do, again, have a quilt shop or a fabric store, and you want to get more, like if you're perfectly fine with the business you have, you don't need to change anything. But if you do find you're wanting to attract more customers, you need to stock things that customers are looking for. All right, we've got a lot more comments. Let's see. Okay, Amy says, I'm 27, have been sewing since I was 5 or 6. Oh, that's awesome. I live in a relatively small town and have been thinking about seeing if the quilt shop would like to partner with some quilting groups and have classes that would interest younger people. Amy, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's something that if you are a younger sewist or seamstress and you do want to get more active in the community, maybe you go to the quilt shop or fabric store and offer to team up with them. And if you are a good teacher, I was even thinking about doing this myself, maybe offering to teach classes to beginners, like how to use the sewing machine. I am certainly not a sewing expert by any means, but I think I could show someone some very basic functions on the sewing machine. And then they would get a younger face into the store too, that might be more welcoming to people, younger customers should they come into the business. So I think that's something that we could do. If you are on the younger side and you do have sewing skills, that's a great way to get involved and try to help other people. All right, Kira, I can't stay long, but I'm a young adult seamstress. I'm trying to get others my age to sew. Exactly, and that's the thing, like once you realize how fun it is and how enjoyable it is, you want other people to do it, but the people are like, oh, I could never do that. All right, Teresa, anything that has to do with fandoms are huge. My nieces and nephews love the pillowcases I make them that have their favorite TV or movie characters. I think that's a great way to relate, and I do think that the fabric choices available now are awesome. Like you can get fabric with anything on them. So getting one with like My Little Ponies or Minecraft characters or whatnot on them, is a good way to relate. All right, JB, people are always so impressed when I tell them I sewed my dress or anything really, but they have absolutely no interest in learning and doing it themselves. People would rather just go shopping. Oh, frowny face. I know, that is kind of sad. It's a little bit disappointing. Okay, Champagne Twist. Most of the big pattern companies are American, and I'm sorry to say many of the patterns are stuck in the past and not in a good way. Champagne Twist, that was actually another thing I wanted to talk about is, and now if you do marketing for a sewing company, please, we're not trying to be mean, but this is coming from with love and coming just from the perspective of, of maybe the type of customer that you'd like to have. But I've noticed the marketing for sewing events, sewing products, and particularly the big commercial sewing pattern companies, I think the indie pattern companies do a little bit better with this, is that the marketing materials are so dated. Like you look at like a website, occasionally I'll find like a website for a sewing event and just the aesthetic of it and the look, the photography, like the font, it's clearly marketed towards older women. And again, you go to these events, and yes, that is most of the crowd, but at the same time, you're probably not going to attract people other than that crowd if the marketing materials clearly reflect that look and style. And I've noticed there are some the big four pattern companies, the pattern photo, the photo on the pattern envelope, there could be a pattern that was just released last week and the fabrics used and just photography and the styling still makes the photo look like it was taken in 1997. What is up with that? Like, I've got a few and I'm like, and it's hard for someone to envision making something that's cool looking or modern looking when the pattern envelope photo just is not appealing at all. And I've noticed that's the case with a lot of the big pattern companies. I would say 80 to 90% of them just do not at all reflect a modern day vibe. Just it's some of the style, and I will give them credit. The styles are getting a little bit better. Like the pattern styles are getting a little more, fresh and, something that I could actually wearable stuff. But it's hard it's hard for people to envision the end product when the fabric is like totally, not up my alley or looks, is like, something that looks like it's, from a time machine, The 80s were great, the 90s were great, but the styles have definitely changed. In fact, I saw one, I'm not trying to be mean, but I saw one pattern for a men's blazer. The fabric was like the most all right, so the blazer itself, the color was like dark neon orange, and it was like it didn't have a lapel, like, so it was like just like it didn't have a lapel on the blazer, so it was just like straight up and down. So the blazer was already a color that, like, I think 99.9% of guys would never wear. And then underneath, the dude had on like a neon yellow t-shirt. I was like, who thought that would be a good look? I don't know. And that was a pattern that is currently available on one of the large manufacturers' website. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it was comical. And if you saw that, like, if you're new to sewing and you're just looking at these patterns, you're going to be like, So I don't know. I think there's definitely room for improvement in that area. Use more modern fabrics, better styling, and I think that's why people appreciate sewing blogs is, particularly take someone like Emily Hallman, my friend. She can take a pattern that on the envelope you wouldn't be like, you wouldn't think it would be all that great. And then she picks like this gorgeous fabric, it does beautiful styling, and then makes it look like $1 million. So people like her actually inspire me to try patterns I normally wouldn't, just because she does such an amazing job with the fabric curation. And big four pattern companies, maybe you could hire more people like that to do better styling, better fabric curation, and really make the pattern envelope photos better. Because again, that's your marketing. That's your marketing there. All right, let's go back to the comments. All right, I second the home. Okay. And Sherry points out schools don't have home ec courses. Sherry, I think I've seen that argument a lot, and I would agree. Home ec, I think, would be helpful to people. But I will say I took sewing in home ec as well. And a while back, I had a conversation with wonderful quilter Mary Fons. If you're not familiar with her, she is a great voice in the quilting space and has a lot of really interesting ideas and perspectives. But we were having a conversation on how to attract, and we do have a video on this. So if you look back, this was one of my first videos. It's called Bringing Sexy Back to Sewing and Quilting. And it's me and Mary kind of, shooting the breeze and talking about it. And she even felt that marketing to teens and kids isn't necessarily how we would really get more people into sewing. She actually suggested we more hit up like 20-something women, because I think as a kid, your hobbies kind of come and go, and you don't always, I think as a kid, you don't stick with everything you try. Like I did a little sewing in home ec, and, it was fun while I did it, although the sewing machines we're using in that class were like not very user-friendly. So I think that almost kind of was detrimental to me, because I remembered that frustrating experience with the sewing machine, and I thought that going forward, like for a long time, I was like, ugh, sewing machines are really, janky and hard to use, and that kind of stuck with me too. So I think, well, yes, it would be cool to have people learning home ec skills in schools. Sometimes it may serve the opposite effect. Like for years and years, I really didn't think I would be able to use a sewing machine because of the experience I had in home ec with like the really, temperamental one. And I had another friend who had a similar experience. She sewed her finger. So in school, she had to sew like a quillo for a middle school project. She sewed her finger into the quillo, and since then has been horrified and terrified to sew. And I think she even mentioned like she left pins in the quillo. Like she said it was really bad. So sometimes I think having a disastrous experience in school might actually put you off to the thing. For instance, I absolutely hated gym class. My teachers were terrible, and they were not very, my gym teachers in school were like, they liked the athletic kids, and if you weren't athletic, they really kind of tried to like crap all over you. So since then, I have not really been motivated to exercise or do anything athletic. So it kind of almost, again, did the opposite, where still am like very traumatized by gym class, and don't want to do anything related to that at all. All right, we've got a few more comments. Okay, I was on Birder for the first time the other day from Jason. There are 4 pages of men's patterns. Half of them are wallets or costumes. I wanted a shirt pattern and only found 2 that were even close to reality. Yeah, the men's patterns can be a little hit or miss, I think. All right, Vic, can I make a shout out to a fellow YouTuber I've been finding so very easy? Great. 2. Okay, that's awesome. All right, olive oil, you need to return to the home ec type classes. Yes, 1 year in middle school, we did an after school sewing class. The kids loved it. I loved it. So yes, I think home ec can be a good thing. But I would agree with Mary. I do think if you want people to stick with sewing long term, I think learning as a young adult, like I think learning basic skills as a kid is great. But if you want to create more like lifelong sewing addicts, I do think picking it up maybe in their teens would be good. Teens to early 20s, I really think would be the sweet spot for really catching this world on fire. Especially, I think, if you're trying to, and when Mary Fonz and I were chatting, she's like, you know what, young women, they're working, so they have disposable income. They have a little bit of free time, they want to do, they got the weekends and, evenings and that sort of thing. But here's the other kicker, they also have money to spend. So if you want kids are great customers, but they have to have their parents buy them stuff, obviously. So I thought that was an interesting point from Mary Fonz. If you haven't checked her out, she has an amazing blog. She's a great writer, and she has some very, very good thoughts, I think, about the sewing and quilting community. But I would agree with her. I think getting people in their teens to early 20s would be a really good time to do it, because that's kind of when they're developing their interests more and passions. And also maybe you'd get more people then considering sewing as a career. I think like high school to early 20s. And again, like I wish I'd taken up sewing earlier. Like after college, I wasted so much time watching like Sex and the City reruns and Veronica Mars. I could have been sewing that entire time and actually doing something, but I didn't. So I think, 20-somethings especially, I think, tend to waste a lot of time on like meaningless crap. Like, hey, I'm going to go out drinking, or, yeah, let's just watch 20 hours of Game of Thrones. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but, those aren't really productive activities, and you could be doing something that actually enhances who you are and benefits you and provide you a skill set. So I think hitting those women and young men, there are young men that want to learn to sew too. I think hitting those demographics would maybe lead to some more long-term customers. Okay, we got comments. Getting on the soapbox now. If you leave school and you can't open and operate a bank account, can't cook from scratch, can't sew 2 or 3 simple garments, then the educational system has failed you. You know what? Yeah, and Champagne Twist, I could definitely do some of those things, but I do think a lot of young people are getting left in the dust for learning basic life skills. I don't know if you guys saw this. There was a story a while back that made the rounds that I think this public library in, I think, Oregon was offering classes on adulting. Like it had a series which I think is a great idea. So they offered classes, like very basic life skills classes, and they called it Adulting 101, which I thought was a really clever name. And maybe we could do something like that. Just offer, I think we need to make sewing more approachable for 2017, for the 21st century. And I don't think we're doing enough. Um, all right, lots more comments. Oh boy. Okay, Jason, I got a chance to meet Mimi G at So Pro last year. She had a lot of good stuff to say and was super nice. That is awesome, Jason. Jason, and I do hope you find that shirt pattern. Joe, Halloween costumes are how a number of people first get into sewing. And I think that's a great segue, like Halloween cosplay, that sort of thing, people making their own costumes. And I will say, this morning, I actually put out like a little informal Facebook poll on my personal page. And I asked, like, what would get you to sew? Are you interested in sewing? And I heard from a few guys. Okay, so, and from the guys I've heard from, basically the vibe is, yeah, I think it would be cool to learn to sew. They don't know the first thing about it, but I think for the guys, they want to learn more practical things. How to hem pants, how to, fix a split seam, more utilitarian type stuff than, making a floral embroidery. But I had a very good conversation with a friend of mine who's a guy, and he was like, you know what? He's like, I would be interested in going to more sewing and quilting type events, but he said he was very put off by the very overwhelmingly feminine vibe to it. He was scared, like he's like, I would be scared to go to those types of events because, again, if it's all chicks, you're gonna be a little that could be a little intense for you. You know what I'm saying? And also, again, going back to the marketing materials, everything's pink, everything's very girly looking. Like I think that really scares off potential male, male sewing enthusiasts, I think, by doing this. He also was saying, he's like, I see a lot of wording that also seems very feminine. He's like, I'd like to see the sewing community use more words like bespoke or custom handcrafted, garments, stuff that's a little more, terminology and wording that's a little more gender neutral and not necessarily super girly. He also was kind of afraid, and I can definitely see this, and I've heard from other men who quilt and sew, is that if you go to a sewing event with mostly women, you kind of are looked at it as an oddity, and it makes them feel like very self-conscious. And I think that's a problem too. I will say I've definitely experienced this myself at sewing events when you're the only young person there. The other people there kind of look at you like you're like on display at the zoo or something. And it can just feel a little awkward, and it kind of makes you feel like very like uncomfortable. Obviously these people have great intentions, and they're just, I think, excited to see a young person there sewing. And probably the same thing with men. But at the same time, like, if you're too intense and you like, just like kind of bombard them, that might scare them off from coming back to more events in the future. All right, got a few. All right, Tony, I saw a tall man in his late 20s buy a machine for himself yesterday. I wondered if he wanted to start sewing clothes that fit for himself. And Tony, I think that's another great way to market to guys, is that, a lot of men have issues with fit. Like my own husband can't find shirts that fit him very well. So that could be a good way to reach them, is, hey, here's how to get clothes that actually fit you. Also, guys do tend to be very budget conscious. So maybe you can be like, learn to tailor your own clothes, learn to fix your own clothes. I think that would be a better way to reach them. And also, all right, I was also I was having a conversation with my husband about this one night. Not to get TMI here, but I was like, how would you recommend we reach out to young men to sew? He put this a little more crudely, but let's say he's like, if guys thought sewing would get them more women, more guys would sew. I know that you're probably like, ick, but you know what? For young singles, if there's a way to maybe meet members of the opposite sex at a sewing event, that might entice them. Maybe more of like a party atmosphere, something that's definitely more marketed as an event for everyone, not just an event for women, but it like more of a group activity, like a lot of friend groups go and do things together. They go hiking together, they go rock climbing, or they go, paint and have wine. So perhaps another thing we could do is to maybe start fostering more events, or communities to do this, like kind of like a, hey, DIY night with all your friends, learn how to make a throw pillow or something. But you have it be more of a unisex atmosphere, and that's something that like a group of maybe 12 friends could come. Maybe there's half guys, half girls, sort of like the people on Friends. They would do things together. So maybe something like that would also entice them too. All right, Howard, approach men with the phrase tailoring. That is perfect. Yes. And Howard, thank you for joining us. I'm assuming you are a guy, so welcome. And I think that's a great way to reach guys, because if guys, I think when anyone thinks of the word tailoring, you think expensive. I think more so men want to keep their clothes longer and keep them nice longer. Also, I've noticed a lot of guys really take care of their clothes. Like my husband shines his shoes like once a week. So he buys something and then he tries to make it last as long as he can. So I do think if there were more maybe beginner classes marketed more with the guys in mind, saying, hey, learn to tailor your own clothes, do it yourself and save money. I think that's something that might appeal to them. More the utilitarian vibe, though, than the, oh my gosh, let's come and, and DIY our own, tote bag or something. But I think that's another way we could reach out to guys. Okay. JB, I asked my brothers and dad why they don't think sewing is for men. Companies need to make black or masculine colored machines. Yes, yes, yes. After all, you're working with a machine with an acceleration pedal. JB, you really hit that on the head. A lot of sewing machines do definitely have a fit. Like, again, no guy is going to buy a pink sewing machine or sewing machine with freaking Hello Kitty on it. Just not going to happen. So sewing machine manufacturers and makers, if you want to sew sewing machines to guys, I hate to be very gender stereotypical, but if it was black or silk, like my husband actually really likes design, and he actually likes sewing. We have a vintage Singer 2012 that's black. He thinks it's really cool looking. He thinks it's a great display piece. It's like very sleek and black. Again, so we do need to think of this. Guys like black, guys like stainless steel, that sort of look. But if it looks very feminine, guys still want to keep up that masculine vibe. They're not going to want to buy even a white sewing machine with red letters on it. They're just not going to go for that. All right. Yes. Champagne Twist. Last time I checked, men wear clothes too. Yes. AC Sewing with the Twist events, wine and sewing. Yeah, I think that would be good. And I also think that, again, I think the marketing and how you approach these events could be improved so that it comes across less as just being for women and more like, hey, just get a group of friends together and learn how to hem pants or something. That might work better. All right, we've got but Champagne Twist, most women wouldn't buy a Hello Kitty sewing machine either. Champagne Twist, in full disclosure, I totally would. I didn't end up buying one, but I do like Hello Kitty. I would buy anything with Hello Kitty on it. Yeah, I'm that kind of person. I had a Hello Kitty bank card for several years. Like when you go to the bank and you have a choice of design styles, I had a Hello Kitty ATM card for probably 6 years. And then when I got married, you had to have the same cards. So my husband had a Hello Kitty ATM card until they discontinued the design. And he actually is he would kind of use it as a joke for people to be like, yeah, check out my bank card. So yes, I do. I am an HK fan. Yes. Jason, absolutely. I'm looking at our machines right now. I see purple, citron, teal, Hello Kitty, and about a dozen white machines. And Jason and Howard, what kind of machines would you like to see? As if you're a guy in here, what kind of machines would you buy? Like, what would you think would be like really badass looking and cool? Kind of like, like my husband loves power tools. He also really likes like cool looking stuff, like he'll look at something and be like, that looks really neat. Like he really likes the design style for certain things. Sherry, they can buy a good suit and have it altered. Men's clothes cost more because they don't have to buy as often, and it's wool fabric, which is durable. And Sherry, I feel like the clothing manufacturers have figured out that guys don't buy clothes very much, so they charge more for them, knowing that planned obsolescence is not going to happen as quickly. You don't see fast fashion for guys isn't quite as much of a thing as it is for women. Oh, Amber's here too. Hello, hello. Deborah, mine is white too. They can dress it up with stickers like the ones they put on their trucks. My husband would probably do camouflage. So maybe like some skins for the sewing machine. Or maybe like, if a guy is into sports, or, certain things, maybe they can have like different, looks, to them. I don't know. Machines for me, gray, black. We have a red one that's manly. Okay, okay. And I do think the long arm quilting machines do look, some of them do look a little more industrial, and I think that helps. I think the industrial sewing machines definitely don't look as feminine and wouldn't put off men as much as some of the other machines do. All right, Jason, there's a black HD 100. I have seen that one. That does look pretty cool. All right, Linda, there's a guy that has sewing videos on YouTube. He has flame decals and stuff on his machine. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, Keaton had an interesting idea. The top of the line machines don't come in those same colors. They're very plain. Amber, our church has donated some cheap Janome machines that we used for a summer camp project, and I helped the kids teach to sew, but the machines didn't work very well, and it ended up being really frustrating. Amber, that's again, such a good point, is that if the kids are frustrated and they don't remember it being an awesome or amazing experience, they might not want to do it later in life. Oh, Dad sew. Okay, Melinda, I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, yes. Sherry, men never did buy clothes as much as women. A man can wear the same suit in the same week. Yeah, exactly. But yet, if a girl wears like the same thing, the next week, they're all like, I don't know. And I do think overall, most women definitely have more clothing, more shoes, handbags, the whole shebang. Men have like 2 pairs of shoes and like 2 t-shirts or something. All right, Howard, my machines are mostly off-white. Even my industrial is off-white. Okay, but Howard, let me ask, what would you like to see for sewing machines? Or how would the sewing industry be able to market to you better as a guy? Howard, wonderful blog and annual meetings in New York about Peter Lapin. Okay, Lapin. I think I've seen Male Pattern Boldness. I've definitely seen his blog. Has numerous men along the ladies. We have such a great group. Exactly. I think as far as the gender thing, I think if we stop making it a big deal, it won't be as big of a deal. But I think when you do have events, and I've even heard of guys. I've heard of a few guys saying, they were told to stop coming to quilting retreats or whatever because they were making the women feel uncomfortable or something. I think it's attitudes like that really steer them away. It's not a very welcoming thing. Or when someone like kind of, from a different walk of life comes in, sort of like how it like, at churches, if someone different walks in, they kind of become more of like a circus attraction than in just being able to hang out and be there. We've got a few. Oh, Melinda, I like this diamond plate. That would be awesome. So that would actually be really super cool. Diamond plate, or like something with like, like again, with some bling on it, something like that. Jason, this reminds me of the whole idea of why computers in the 80s and 90s were all off-white and beige. The idea was that they'd sit around and get dusty, so they're eventually, ew. But a good example of a company that made aesthetic an important part of stuff is Apple. I mean, look at Apple was like such a terrible company, and up until like the 90s or something. Apple was definitely on a downward spiral, but then they made Apple cool again. So I think there's a way that sewing machines could be cool again if we improve the way they look, and just improve we definitely need to improve the marketing to potential customers. Like if I see a marketing material and it looks like it's for a retired woman, I'm certainly not going to be as likely to be into that thing, So I think there's definitely some ways we can definitely make things better and make sewing more appealing to a wider group of people than we currently are. All right, Howard, the best machine ever, the Bernino 1008, can't even begin to tell you how wonderful it is. That's awesome. That's awesome. Keaton Quilts. Keaton Quilts is here. All stainless steel would be nice. Ooh, that would be nice. All right, so if you are a sewing machine manufacturer and you're watching this, take notes. All right, the men are saying black machines, stainless steel machines, maybe like a sleek black, kind of like that glossy black, high gloss black, something like that. Okay, Sherry, machines need to be cheaper. I would agree with this. I think even if you don't sew, people who don't sew think $100 for a sewing machine is expensive. they have no idea how expensive they really are, but that price perception is still there. So people think that $100 sewing machines are high end, when obviously we know that's not the case. There are $12,000 sewing machines, there are $30,000 sewing machines, but people don't know that. If you're not familiar with it, how are you going to know? All right, AC making things, food, clothing, taking care of your cars, homes, it just isn't cool now. AC, don't say that. We can make it cool. Yeah, and in AC, men and women both cook. What is the big deal with sewing? Sherry likes older machines. They're true workhorses, and I would agree with Sherry. I think some of the vintage machines are both beautiful, cool looking, and they function really well. Another thing. Okay, Toyota makes a black machine. Ooh, I like that. Melinda, I wish the machines were a bit more affordable and that I can have one more for each task. Yes, I prefer to do that as well. Another thing I wanted to touch on is that is more about how we treat people that are coming into the community. And again, someone actually commented on my Instagram page about this. They're like, you know what? I've gone to some events or some classes, and so, I'm like she's like, I'm a younger quilter, but some of the older people, like, just were very highly critical and were just very telling them they were doing everything wrong. And I think that sort of attitude can also scare people away. I think we need to be welcoming to anyone that's coming into the sewing and quilting world, no matter who they are, no matter how old they are, no matter what color they are, no matter what kind of lifestyle they have. If we want to grow this world, we really need to be more all-inclusive and less critical, less judgmental. And I do see some of that in this space, and it's very disappointing and it's very discouraging. I've gone to some events I've gone to several, all right, so my experience was I've gone to several like different types of events, retreats, classes, and my personal experience, and I'll share this, and this is not trying to be like a real super negative thing, but it's something that I think happens, and something that we need to figure out. Well, for one, the demographic at all of these events is definitely over 40, over 50. I went to one class more recently, and I was probably the youngest person there by at least 20 years. So again, while the social media circle kind of makes us feel like there's more younger, more youthful energy there, I think when you actually go to these events in person, you're like, wow, there really is, and someone actually commented on this, I think on another video, or sent me an email, where are the younger people? They're not there. I don't know if they don't know about the event, or again, they're just not interested, but they're not showing up at these events. You don't see young people, and the only men you tend to see there are the ones that are there with their wives, and they look really super bored. So that's also not really ideal. But I've gone to a lot of these events, and sometimes the way you're treated can be a little bit like off-putting, I guess. I went to one workshop one time, and it was a long arm. It was sort of like an introduction to long arm quilting. So I was kind of excited. I was like, okay, I want to see what it's like to use a long arm quilting machine. It looks really cool. I just want to see what it's all about. Every single other person in the class was over 55 for sure. Like I don't think there was anybody else under the age of 55 in this class. So we were partnered up with, you had a partner, and then you were supposed to like share time on the machine. So the woman I partnered up on, I was getting sort of, I don't know, we didn't become like instant friends. And now, so we were in this class together, and she was like, for one, she was kind of like cogging the machine. So she and she really had like no regard for me, or like, kind of collaborating or sharing the machine. She kind of wanted the machine all herself. And again, the class was not cheap. I think I paid $120 for that one class that was like 3 hours. So, we were in this class together, and also whenever it was my turn, like I think at one point the teacher actually said to her, let her have a turn, meaning me, because this lady was just like dominating the whole thing. Her energy and her personality was just very dominating. And then when I was trying to use the machine, like for some reason, she assumed, now she had never used a long arm. She had told me she had never used a long arm machine before. So neither of us really knew much about the machine. But she was acting like as if she knew everything. Like, I would like, and she really didn't like, like I would be using the machine and she would try to like interject and like try to like talk over me or like try to start pushing buttons when it was my turn. And I'm like, lady, you don't know anything more than I do. Like, why are you trying to like exert yourself as an authority? And it was just a very weird experience, and I would say not a really positive one. Now, I have met lots of other people at these events that were very welcoming, very warm and friendly. But then there can definitely be folks at these events that are like that lady, where, they know everything and they kind of treat anyone that's younger in kind of a condescending way. And I've heard this from other people as well, so I know I'm not alone in this. I don't think these people necessarily have bad intentions, but I do think that they have a certain way that they look at younger people at these events and kind of make a lot of assumptions. How did she know? She didn't know I'd never used a machine before. Maybe I've been doing it for years. Or you go into a quilt shop and, somebody starts kind of talking down at you and, they don't know anything about you, so they kind of assume you don't. I think sometimes when you see more experienced sewers and quilters, they assume they know more. Some of them assume they know more than you and then start talking to you in a way that's like a little condescending. So, okay, Sherry, everywhere I go, I'm either the only woman, the youngest person, or the only person of color. You just have to go with the flow. Sherry, I think that's a good attitude to have. But I will say that I think if you are trying to welcome people in there, don't treat them like they're a little kid. Like sometimes when I've gone to these events, like the older women there treat me like I'm 5. Like the way they talk to you and the way they treat you, it's like you're like a 5-year-old child. And look, I'm a grown woman. I'm not super new to sewing. I can sew. I'm here to learn, but I'm also, I also want to be treated as an adult. So I think that's something that does happen at some of these events, is that the older women treat the younger women like they're not adults. And again, I'm not trying to say this to be mean. I'm trying to say this from things I've experienced and things that I've heard from other people that have had similar experiences. So if you are at an event and there are younger people there, if you can try to avoid that, try to just, be friendly, be encouraging, but also don't rip apart what they're doing. You want to be an encouraging factor and not something where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to go to this type of event again. Okay. Vic, my own church didn't tell me about an event that was going on. I found out that my church was making cloth menstrual pads to send overseas, and I make and wear them all the time. Oh, that's sad. All right. Okay. Vic, I feel like a lot of classes are only advertised between the older folks. Champagne twist, there are not enough men, mixed ages, sewing, etc. in Europe where I live, but there are more equal ratios than what I see stateside. Champagne twist, I think that's definitely accurate. I think there are definitely more people sewing in Europe than there are in the United States. And again, that's why I have this YouTube channel, is to try to, especially, I'm an American, I want to encourage other people here to sew too. All right, we've got Jason. Okay, we did an apparel class and we had different machines set up for different steps. Serger, cover stitch machine, straight stitch only, way easier than changing back and forth. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think having more sewing machines, the more sewing machines that you have that are different, the better. All right, Vic, I think that people don't even consider that I might know more about a subject than someone older. Yes, I would agree. Deborah, I've steered clear of classes just because of being treated like a child. Exactly. Thank goodness for YouTubers who like to share their skills. So yeah, so if you are, again, and I know this is a bit of a hard topic to address. We don't want to, we're not trying to tear apart, older people. Obviously, there are many people I've met that have been older than myself that have been wonderful influences, shared their knowledge, and it was a great experience. But then you also have the bad ones too. And I think especially if you are very new to sewing, one bad experience can kind of put you off to it. And we really don't want that to happen to people. We want people to be like, yeah, this is the best thing ever, and come back. But I think when people have that negative experience, they don't want to come back, and they're just going to be like, yeah, I felt sort of weird about it, so I'm not really going to, yeah, not really. And another thing that happened to me more recently, I was at this, I went to a local class to learn some techniques, and that's the thing, like, when you're trying to find these events, you'll be like sewing classes in Atlanta or whatever, or you'll see something on Facebook, and then, you'll get, you'll go, but you don't know who's going to be there. You're like, I don't know what, you really don't know what to expect. So I signed up for this class and went. And again, this was the one where, yeah, I was definitely the youngest person by at least 20 years. And most of the women there were very, were pretty chill. But there was this one lady that was sitting next to me. And every time, like she just kept talking at me like I was a kid. Like she would, like I would ask. There was another lady sitting next to me that I felt a little more comfortable with chatting about. Again, this other lady, she was super intense, very like aggressive and in my face. And it was just not something I was up for that day. I was like, I don't know. So, I'd ask this other lady, and then she would just kind of interject, but she was like very, very, like just way too aggressive. Her intensity level was like 150. And then she kept trying to pressure me into joining this sewing guild. And I was like, look, my schedule really doesn't permit me to do stuff like this. This was something I was able to do every once in a while. But again, my schedule is so crazy that I can't commit to like coming to a monthly meeting or doing this stuff or that sort of thing. But she just kept kept pressuring me. And it was just, honestly, that lady alone, I probably won't go to another one of those organizations' events because I'm like, this was too like it was a little stress. At the end of the day, it got a little stressful. She was like very talking down to me and again, treating me like I was a kid. Now, I know I look a little bit young for my age, but I think I at least come across as being over 18. And I felt like it was just very, it was just very uncomfortable, and I know, I think she meant well. I don't think she wasn't intentionally trying to be that way. But again, I think that kind of happens when you have an event and someone shows up that's younger or a guy. Again, they become more of a curiosity, and they, and then those people tend to really put the spotlight on that one person. And I think it can kind of make them like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? So if you do have events, or if you're in that sort of situation and someone shows up that doesn't normally show up, just be chill. You don't need to hound them. You don't need to get all up in their face. Let them enjoy it, but don't make a huge deal about the fact that there's, an 18-year-old there or a 25-year-old there. Because that can make them be like, this is way too much for me. Okay, let's see. Sherry, I shop at Pearl Soho in New York City. The customers are younger and caters to the knitting and sewing community. Sherry, I've definitely checked out Pearl Soho. I think they have a good aesthetic going on. And also, someone pointed this out, particularly knitting, it's a little more of a portable activity. So I think that tends to catch on more with young people. They don't need to buy a sewing machine, so there's less barriers to entry. I've talked to some friends in New York City, and they say they don't have room for a sewing machine. So sadly, I think that's for the city dwellers, they tend to use that excuse. I don't have room for sewing machines and supplies, so I can't do it. So that tends to be the response I get from people that live in big cities. Champagne Twist, sewing is not considered an aspirational hobby or skill. It's expensive and time consuming. That, yes, it can be. If you're on minimum wage, it's not going to be easy to start to continue using your sewing skills. You know what? And that's one thing I do think I want to make some more videos about how to sew on the cheap, how to get into sewing if you don't have a big budget, because I think that's a very real struggle and a very real barrier to entry for many young people. Obviously, a lot of people are having trouble finding a job, or getting out of college without debt. Amber, I agree. It's funny how that has changed over the years. I just inherited all my grandmother's sewing materials. Even with inflation, seems like the prices on her things were lower. Teresa, there is still the stigma of men doing women's crafts being being like seen as gay. I know a lot of men who won't even look into it because they are afraid of what their guy friends will say. And that's something that's, a real, thing too. And I will say the guys that I've talked to about sewing that were interested, they were actually all straight men. So the whole stereotype of just gay men being into sewing is not necessarily true. But yes, I would agree. It's definitely perceived that way. So, a lot of guys may be kind of ashamed or embarrassed to sew. Okay, we've got a few more comments. S. Douglas, I would love to see more Anglophone North Americans sewing their own clothes. At the local fabric stores, most of the cloth seems to be sold to quilt makers and not to home dressmakers. Yeah, and that is the thing. When you go into the local fabric stores, it does tend to be mostly quilting cottons. There are some fabric stores, but they tend to be more like like a fabric warehouse or something. But I do think they're like, if people do more of the business, like Pearl Soho, great business aesthetic, like they have a great aesthetic, and I think they really if you go to Pearl Soho's website, I think they really make it easier for people. Like they'll sell kit. Like I love Pearl Soho's tutorials. I use them all the time, and they're all like free. And I also like how Pearl Soho makes it easy for you to gather the materials. They sell the kits, so when you see an inspirational photo, they say, hey, do you want to make this exact tote bag? Well, here's the fabric you need, and we'll also send you like the zipper, and the interfacing or whatever. So I do think businesses can do things like that to make it easier for the customer to envision and to really think that this project is doable for them. A way to make that project, easier to accomplish and simpler. All right, we've got Champagne Twist. Those who have the finances or time are more likely to buy clothes rather than make them and showcase their hauls on YouTube. Champagne Twist, here's where I think we can get those people. For the people with money who could buy nice clothes, I think the way to reach out to them is, hey, you can make custom clothing that's fit exactly for you and unique so no one else has it. I think that is the way to reach people that are into designer clothing, is to, and here's the other thing I want to put out there is that, it seems becoming more and more popular to make like designer couture type clothing. I think that market is not at all saturated. If you can tell, women and men, hey, do you like Calvin Klein? Do you like Michael Kors or, Ralph Lauren? Well, you can make better clothes than that and cheaper, because while sewing can be expensive, I think sewing couture clothing, making it yourself, is a lot cheaper than buying designer clothing. So I do think that is a way to tap more into the high-end market, is if sewing is more of a status symbol. So, because again, you can buy clothes, but the person who makes their own clothes and it looks freaking amazing, that person's going to get a lot more recognition. And of course people want to do things for Instagram photos, but if they say, hey, I made this, not only does it look amazing, but I freaking made this, I think that's where we can attract a younger audience. Particularly, again, people that would buy designer clothing, I think sewing as an activity needs to be seen as more of a status symbol. Like, hey, this is something only the super cool people do and can do. And it's also not super easy to make your own couture clothing. So it's something that is more of an aspirational kind of like a, hey, it's definitely if we make sewing more like a badge of honor, something like that. Okay, Vic, I know MIT hates sewing because she feels like she can't get it quite perfect. Oh, mother-in-law, okay. Melinda, my stuff isn't perfect, but the shirt I just made had long enough sleeves and covered my tush. Yes. And I think that's another thing, is that, is to appeal to people on the fit level too. Hey, you can get better fitting clothing and it'll look better on you. It won't cost it'll probably cost about the same if you're buying like a really high-end thing. But if it's a designer piece, like again, there's a Craftsy class on making your own Chanel style jacket. Making a Chanel style jacket is going to be a lot less expensive than actually buying a Chanel jacket, and you can make it in whatever fabric you want, make it to fit you perfectly. So I think that's, again, a way we could appeal to those crowds. Okay. Melinda, some of the stuff on the shelf now have seams on the outside and holes on purpose, so we can all do that, yes. And if you are All right, so if you are a younger sewing enthusiast here, also to touch on going to sewing events, what has been if you're a male or you're under, say, 35, what's been your experience going to sewing and quilting events? Have you had any negative ones? And also, how are you treated at these events? I would just want to take a little informal poll here. And I think after this is over, I forgot to put the poll question up this week. I forgot to change that. So I forgot to change it from week to week. So after this is over, I'm going to be adding a poll question about I don't know. We'll have to see what the question of the day is. I'll have to figure it out. All right, a champagne twist. I completely agree. There is also a snobbery attached. Need to get rid of the silly stigma and query why so-called high-end and badly made clothing enjoys such a good reputation. Yes, and there is some good. There are some truly gifted designers, but even some of the like Banana Republic clothing or like the more expensive like ready to wear stuff. When you look at it, like I look at a lot of J. Crew and Banana Republic dresses and stuff. They're all polyester. Like they're not even made of like a really nice fabric. It's seriously polyester. So I've even been trying to at least educate the people I know, like, hey, just so you know, look at the fiber content. If it's polyester, it's basically plastic. So you should probably look for more natural fibers or higher end fibers like wool, silk, that sort of thing. Champagne twist. There are so many people who want to make a good quality Chanel style jacket, including me. Hint, hint. So why the big four only make jackets my gran wouldn't wear? Oh boy, that's awesome. All right, Sherry, it will cost $400 to make a Chanel jacket than buying one for $4,000. Exactly. So I think that's how you can appeal to people who like designer clothing. Hey, you can get a super high-end looking couture jacket for much cheaper. So in that sense, I do feel sewing is cheaper. Overall, and again, that's why I do want to make some videos on how to sew on a budget, how to save money while sewing. So if you are into sewing but you don't have a huge budget, here's how you can accomplish that. Sherry, I don't consider and Sherry, I know Banana Republic isn't designer clothing, but they're still selling dresses for $200-300 that are made of polyester. Doesn't that seem crazy to you? Like polyester's fairly cheap to buy, from fabric.com or whatever. So it does seem a little silly to me whenever I see a company selling a polyester garment for $100, $200, $300, and it's made of polyester. I just think that's kind of crazy. All right, Melinda, boys are 20 and 15, so I'm doing my part. Melinda, awesome. Vic, I'm 22. I've never been informed that there even was a sewing class group. I'd go if someone let me know if there was something going on. JB wishes there were more events in your area. JB, I know you live in El Paso. Why don't you start one? And I do want to share this story with you. I have a friend from college who is we haven't really touched base in a few years, but I recently did. She has gotten into quilting. So I was super excited to see that. And I think the way she got into it, now she is a younger mother and she also works full time. But she actually got into it through friends. So again, it was another thing where, her friend was doing it, so she did it too. And now she does events with friends where they quilt for the day. So I think that's something, if it's more of a social thing, I think that's the way, we can kind of spread sewing, is if one person does it, they introduce it to their friends and then it kind of spreads like wildfire, All right. Stephanie, I just got back from a baby shower and you're still going. Yes, I am. Well, there I volunteered to teach my friend's 13-year-old daughter to sew, and I want to get my daughters a sewing machine for Christmas. Yay! All right, and Vic, to be honest, I don't think the sewing groups are trying very hard to get the word out. And I do think, Vic, some of these businesses and groups, they may not have the know-how to do that. A lot of people are still even having trouble with Facebook, So maybe that's something, if you know of a group, you could offer to help. Maybe you could offer to help them, say, hey, I could help you run an Instagram account. I could help you do a Facebook page. Because I do think some of these people just don't have that sort of savvy. So maybe they could use some help in that department. Anyways, guys, this has been super fun. I don't know if there's any other offshoot of this topic we could touch on. But yeah, and another thing I wanted to, going back to the marketing of this whole thing, again, one of the reasons I started this channel was because I didn't feel like there were a lot of women like me represented in the sewing space. Obviously, I'm an Asian female. I don't have children. I'm younger, but I also have a full-time job. So I'm a younger professional without kids. And even a lot of the sewing blogs I see, they tend to appeal more to like the stay-at-home mom type crowd, or retired women. And I think the same thing for sewing events. So I wanted to have a voice for like the women who work that don't have children, that just want to make things for themselves and for gifts. So hopefully I do an okay job with that. I'm certainly not a sewing expert, but I think, if you don't feel like your voice is represented, why not start saying something, or start a YouTube channel, or start a blog with your own point of view? Because even though there might be a ton of other sewing blogs or vlogs out there, we all have our own unique voices, and we all have something to add to the conversation. So I think that's another thing that we can do to kind of make sewing a more diverse space. If you're a man who sews, Keaton quilts, you have a blog. I've met a couple other guys that have sewing blogs. So I think the more we can kind of get the word out that there's different types of people who sew, that might also help over time to break down these really outdated stereotypes about people who sew, because they're just not true. They're just not true, and I think for me, and a while back I had a conversation with someone who works in the sewing industry. She kind of wanted to get my thoughts on some stuff. She'd read my editorials, and she was kind of doing some, I won't say where she worked, but she was doing some market research for sewing, and she's like, you know what? You're the only person I've talked to. I've talked to a lot of people. You're the only person I've talked to who works outside of the home that sews. So I really want to encourage, I really want to do my part to encourage working women. Hey, sewing is approachable. Sewing is doable. It's not something that if you don't have a lot of time, you can still sew and have fun with it. You don't need to be retired. You don't need to be a stay-at-home mom. You can still do it, enjoy it, and make really beautiful things. And I wanted to show that it was possible, because I don't really think that people of my demographic are really represented well in this space. Anyways, if you guys have any other thoughts, let me know. Obviously, I've seen a lot of you have been commenting, so thank you guys so much. I know this is a topic I've been kind of wanting to do a show about for a while. And obviously, I've written about it before. So if you want to read the editorials I wrote about attracting millennials to sewing, I've kind of shared some of these same thoughts. But this is just something. Oh, if anyone's okay, Champagne Twist. If you're in the UK and want to go to the knitting and stitching show at Alexander Palace, I have some free tickets. Champagne Twist, thank you so much for offering that. If anyone would like to take Champagne Twist up for that, obviously you can message her. Amber, I love your voice. I'm glad you're doing this. And let's see. Josie, you do a wonderful job and you're funny. I'm glad you find me funny. Hopefully, yeah. You know what? I just like to, I think the most important thing about representing yourself is to just being the person you are. I've heard this saying is that the one unique, the one thing you have about yourself that no one else does is your unique personality. Okay, Sunny, I wish I got to know more sewists in my area. That would be awesome. Maybe I'll look into it. Melinda, there's a lovely blog about the lawyer sews her own clothes. Oh, that sounds, yes, let me know. I want to hear about that. That sounds, especially if you're making your own suits or something, that would be pretty, high-end looking suits. Because I know a lot of my lawyer friends wear like pretty high-end clothing labels. So people would probably be pretty impressed if you sewed your own designer looking suit. All right, Melinda, I would like to go to Carlisle, Champagne Twist. Laura, I don't work anymore, but when I had a full-time job, I sewed and made virtually all my own clothing. Laura, my hat's off to you. That is hard. All right, Amber, a lot of stay-at-home moms sew at night when most people are home anyways. Exactly. So I feel like a lot of women don't think they'd have time to do it. When really, you know what? Instead of watching those 5 episodes of, Law and Order or something, why not sew and watch the show too? So you don't necessarily have to give up other activities, because you can sew and do other things. You can sew and watch a movie. So it's something where you can multitask and, listen to a podcast or something like that while you're doing that. And I think that's something that I like to do. So I like to multitask. Like right now, I'm doing the slideshow and I'm doing laundry and running the dishwasher. So there's ways that you can make it work. And also, I just like making things for myself, and I love making gifts. So that's one of the big reasons why I think I've really come to love sewing. It gives me a really creative outlet. Obviously, I like making videos, and that's, it's just something that's really added a lot to my life. And I was like, you know what? A lot of people don't know this, and I want to, I just wanted to be able to share that and encourage other people to give it a try because it's done a lot for me. And I think spreading the word, spreading the gospel of sewing is something we can all do and all contribute something to. So anyways, it's almost 4:30. Wow. And I gotta take some clothes out of the dryer. I know, a very exciting Sunday. If anyone has a suggestion for a topic for next week, let me know. And also, after this live stream is over, you'll be able to watch the replay. So if you missed part of it, don't worry, you can go and catch it at the beginning. And I'm hopefully going to be putting up a poll question about sewing. So be sure to check that out in the cards after this is over. I forgot to change it from last week. I know. So hopefully I will be doing it soon. Okay, we got a couple more comments. TD, I'm a firm believer that you have to make time for yourself. Yes, and sewing is good for that. I have a button that says mom of duty that I wear. Oh, mom off duty that I wear when I sew. And kids, that's kind of awesome. That is, yeah. And I do think, I think the more sewing is represented in pop culture and in, media coverage and just I think just the more we see sewing, the more we see people sewing, the more we can, again, the more normalized it becomes. Because in 20 or 30 years, I really hope that sewing is still around. But let's be honest, if by 2050, not many people are sewing, imagine how limited the sewing machine choices will be, the fabric choices will be. There will probably always be a few people sewing, but if more people don't sew, fabric makers, sewing machine manufacturers, won't really be able to offer much in the way of options. So that's something to think about for the future, even though right now it might not seem like a big deal, like, oh, whatever. It's definitely an issue that I think we all need to kind of band together and try to figure out. So if you have any other thoughts, feel free to leave it in the comments. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate all the support and the conversations. It's always great. So I will see you guys all next week. And and if you have an idea for a topic you'd like to see me talk about next week, let me know because I do not have one yet. So I could definitely use your input for sure. I'll see you guys all next week and have a good Sunday.